Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to the Sunday night breakdown. It's Christmas Eve in the drunk tank. An old man said to me, I've phoned for Forrester, we'll be out in an hour or so. All right, Dave, for those who are listening on podcast, Dave is suited and booted. He's come straight from court, I think.
Yeah, Saturday. It's Sunday night breakdown on Saturday morning. Saturday mornings have remand courts on in Christmas Eve. So yeah,
Yeah,
bit
my
of a
wife got
Christmas
very
tea.
excited when she said, "What time are you doing it?" I says, "I don't know, Dave's in court." And she's like, "What happened?" She thought you were on the other side of the other side of the dock, Your Honor.
We argue, but it could happen one of these
Yeah,
days.
one of these days, statistically speaking. Right, let's get on with the basketball. We
Mm.
have to go back to Monday, the rare Monday night game, and the argument over whether Monday is midweek or not. Bristol Flyers 79, London Lions 97 in the cup. No Best, no Nelson, no Soko. Jordan Taylor in for a debut for the Lions, and you could straight away see what Taylor could bring to the team. First couple of buckets and assists, some D, London out to a 15-6 lead.
Yeah, interesting stuff, really. Obviously, Taylor's playing. We don't know. We don't know what. I don't know what the rules are at the moment.
My
I used to
understanding
know
is
what
the
the
rules
rules are as
haven't
part of.
changed.
The rules haven't changed. In that
Yes.
case, in order for Best to come back and play in the BBL, they'll have to deregister Taylor. You
Or
can only
somebody else.
deregister up to or somebody else. Yeah. So I mean, it'd be nice for that to be clarified. I think there's a long list for the new CEO to do, but one of them would be to publish the rules on the website. Would be very beneficial to everybody. Transparency generally doesn't hurt. But anyway, they brought in Taylor, and yeah, absolutely, you could see why. Look, high level screen and roll guard. The way that he manipulated the ball, his body type is kind of very stocky and physical, but he's got enough going. He's got enough going to the rim as well, and clearly somebody who's extremely comfortable shooting the 18-foot jump shot coming off the screen and roll. It's kind of a bigger version of Quincy Taylor in that way. You know, it just in his game type, and yeah, and they came out and they were pretty impressive. I mean, I thought Bristol played really well in this game. I thought they never let it go. They were up for the game. It wasn't like the game on Friday night at the Copper Box, and London just basically handled them. And it was, you know, I think I sent you a text saying, you know, one step closer to Armageddon. You know, saying they're going nuclear. You know, and they looked like a group which had corrected the major issue that it had. And obviously, what we haven't seen yet is him and Nelson playing together as well, you know. So it'll be interesting to see what they do, what they do with their personnel, because, you know, on the face of it, Best wasn't necessarily the one that you would think wouldn't be playing BBL. He's probably more suited to BBL out of all of them. But they never looked out of control in this game, despite the fact that Bristol gave it a heck of a good go.
They did, yeah. They Mahan made a couple of threes, got it to 1. Then Herban hit 8 quick points. It was back out to 13. 6:30 to go to halftime. 31-38. London then went 12-2 to lead 33-50, and it was never in single figures after that. And as you say, Bristol played pretty well to be beaten by 18.
Yeah, I thought Herban was really good.
He was this guy is unbelievable.
You know, just you know, and when you've got your kind of the fourth or fifth player in the scouting report playing like that, probably the fourth or fifth player, but I bet he is.
yeah.
On the scouting report playing like that, and you've got Kufos being as mobile as he was, and as effective as he was as well. Then they're really a tough team to beat. And this is a team without Nelson, Soko, and Best as well, and Oni. Let's not forget Oni.
Yeah, and Oni.
You know, and the only thing I would say about Bristol is that I thought they got. I was surprised. Mayhem went. Mayhem was wound up for the game, and Mayhem went off, and he made 5 threes, and you know, and was talking, making shots. He only played 18 minutes. You know, he had 16 points and like 7 rebounds in 18 minutes. And sometimes I think they can get a little bit lost in the various combinations of players that they've got. Because I looked back at it a little bit. I didn't see much in the way of defensive deficiencies, which would not have them on the court. And I thought, you know, maybe because they have so many guys who are kind of similar that they rotate them a lot. Sometimes they rotate them when they're red hot as well. And at times it might be his night to play 30 minutes and go up for 35. And that might have given him a shot of getting up to London's 90 odd points. But this was a worrying development for the rest of the league, this game, because it was a difficult environment on a Monday night against a team that they've just beaten with a trophy on the line, and they were, to use the phrase, they were locked in. Everybody always says they're always locked in, and they're not, and they were locked in that game. And I don't really think there was much more to it than that. It wasn't that it was boringly efficient, if I can put it that.
Was. Yeah.
Boring, and that is the very best place to be if you're a basketball.
Yeah.
That's a compliment.
Ollison led the way with 17 for Bristol. Mahan 5 of 5 for 3 for 16.6 rebounds. Bell 15.7 rebounds. Kufos 11 of 15 for 24.7 rebounds. Decker 20 and 5. Herban 7 of 9, 4 of 5 from behind the arc, 18 points.
I don't think you can beat London if Kufos goes off. I think because his points are so comfortable that unless you can, I think it's a little bit like the Crandall Nelson Henry thing last year. If Nelson Henry went off, then Leicester were winning. Nelson Henry scored. If Kufos gets going early, because he gives them something that Sharma doesn't, so they're splitting minutes between Kufos and Sharma. But Sharma's not going to give you those points on the short roll in the post up that Kufos does. And you've got to those 22 points, given all the other talent that they've got, 24 points, given all the other talent that they've got, those 24 points are going to take them over the hump every single time.
Sticking with London in the Euro Cup on Wednesday, London Lions 80, Paris Basketball 93. If you listen to this at the beginning of the season when I did Paris and we were looking at the other teams, I said, if you can take the 3 away from Paris, I think they're beatable. This is the most modern basketball of all modern basketball, isn't it, Paris? It's just jack a 3 or take it to the rim and nothing in between.
Yeah, absolutely. And they were pretty good at it. And to be fair, I think they might have been listening to a little bit of the breakdown because, we've talked about London's Achilles heel being defending the 3. They came out and exploited that to the nth degree. Now, they also exploited London's, lack of bodies. I mean, how a team with 16 or 17 players can end up suiting up 8. It really does indicate, there's a level of attrition going on in the sport and in the schedule that they've got going. But, you've got Solowade played 34 minutes on Monday night. And he wasn't playing on Wednesday. Soko obviously was sat there courtside with him. And they weren't ill. They were sat there. They were injured. No Nelson, no Oni, no Soko, no Solowade, no Komagum, no Kaboza. Somebody else as well. No Queely.
Did you mention Queely? Yeah,
no Queely. You know what I mean? So not all these guys would have a massive. It doesn't actually impact their main units that are going to play. Possibly apart from Nelson and Soko, who are now becoming off the bench, I assume, given that they've got Taylor and Zubcic in the starting lineup. But it does impact their depth. It also impacts the amount of minutes that they have to play on in the other games as well. So that hurt them. Couple of things about the environment. It was full, and I'm really kind of grinchy, so I'm going to put the tree away. Sorry, tree, off you go. Because whilst everybody else is enjoying the fact that it's full and that we've got a vibrant environment, they've got a light show going on, they've got the seats in the dark and all of that stuff. I was sitting there thinking, I've seen this before 30 years ago. And it sometimes being versed in the history of stuff is actually, the thief of joy.
That's a good way of putting it.
It just takes away the kind of the buzz. And I'm sure for everybody that was there and looking at it, it was great. I mean, but hearing Martin Henlin on the commentary said, after about 5 minutes, it doesn't seem that most of the fans actually know what's going on. And seeing the Mexican waves and all of that stuff, I just gave us kind of the goosebumps, not the good goosebumps, the goosebumps of like, oh, here we go again. This is what's been tried before and failed. Now, obviously, things have changed in 30 years. Not my hair color, but basically everything. And the world's a different place. The advertisers, the marketing, the resources, the ability to project images, etc., are so much different to what they were. So it's a false comparison that I'm making, which kind of annoys me, but it's in the back of my mind. You know, this is not just because there are 7,000 people there, and just because they're doing a Mexican wave, and just because there's a bit of a light show, it doesn't mean anything else has changed. You know, it's still the same situation, the same finances, etc. So I'm saying that just to get out there, just so people can accuse me of being a Grinch, really. But you know, on the grand scheme of things, it's pretty good. You know, they've been paying for tickets. The question is always, you know, once you put that level of show on for one game, can you do it for every game? Because if you don't do it for every game, then you can't complain about others not doing it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, their game night experience is night and day from where it was.
Obviously, I'm
a
kind
year
of
ago.
used to remember the Copper Box and Vince's 26 at half times, so you could have Alicia on the court in the middle of a cup semi-final, which was not popular when we were winning. So yeah, I appreciate that. So I don't want to be unduly negative, and I probably shouldn't say anything at all. But this is a forum to get rid of opinions. So that is what.
So back on the court, they hit 3-3-pointers at the start of the second quarter. We're up 12. Lions didn't score for the first 5 minutes of the second quarter, and that was the game starting to get away from them, but they did cut it back.
Yeah, well, Herban basically couldn't make a shot in this game, and I actually looked at him. I thought he was ill. You know, he was ill or he was tired, because all his shots were short. He even shot an air ball from the corner at one point, and it was like, this isn't the guy I've been watching all season. Then you look at the athleticism that the French team had inside, which really impacted them, and their ability to shoot the basketball and get open shots. And I'm afraid, you know, Taylor might be a hell of a player, and he will be a hell of a player for them, but it's still his second game.
Yeah.
You know, and you can't just.
I think he only had one practice as well.
You can't just plug people into a team that's been playing all season and just expect to have them playing at a ridiculously high level. You know, in that type of game, because it's all about the defensive coverages. And if you're one step short or one step off where you're meant to be, the ball gets switched, somebody overhelps, the ball gets switched again. That's an open 3-point shot. And the open 3-point shots killed them. And I don't know how many they made. They must have made about 17. 15. Yeah. And you know, and there didn't seem to be there may have been the plan, but there didn't seem to be the energy from London to run them off. The coach may have said, we've got to try and run them off, but I didn't see that. You know, there was too many catch and shoot, stand up, walk up 3-point shots with feet set, and you know, that's their kryptonite at the moment.
35-38 just before halftime, 39-52, 2.5 minutes into the third quarter. That was kind of the decisive run. It got to 68-91 with 2:30 to go. London with a 12-2 finish. You never know if the points might matter. Somebody else tweeted, shout out Rob Scott, not me. So there you go. And the interesting one was the shot chart on this thing. If you go onto Eurocup website and look at the shot chart, because it's literally 3-point shots or layups and dunks, basically. Then there was, I remember seeing one sort of like 15-foot mid-range thing, because I was doing a different Eurocup game, so I looked at this afterwards and saw all the threes and looked at the shot chart. And then when I watched the game back, the one shot that I'd gone, that's an odd-looking place to have shot the ball, given the rest of the game, was an on the buzzer, got to throw it up, or it's a 24-second violation.
You know, it's not offensive. It's not offensive philosophy, and it's you know, it makes sense maths wise, but it's also indications of, you know, defensive energy. You know, you can run people off the 3-point line, and force them into mid-range shots. They're drilled well enough to kind of punch dribble it in and kick it out again for another one. Then you've got to run them off again, and then punch dribble again and kick it out again. But you can't do that if you've got the energy. I just didn't think London did. And you have to bear in mind, you know, they played Friday, they played Monday, they played Wednesday. And whilst everybody thinks, oh, they've got, you know, we've got hundreds of players, etc., there's not hundreds of players playing at the moment.
Yeah.
You know, these guys are playing substantial minutes, and they played. I mean, I think from memory, and it's going back to Monday now, it was either Monday or Wednesday, you know, that Decker, I think it was Monday, Sam Decker came back in the game with 3 minutes to go when they're up 17. You know, something like that. And I'm thinking, oh, I might be keeping them sitting down for a little bit longer than doing that. So that shows the level of seriousness that they took the Bristol thing, if that is what I'm remembering rightly. And I just think, you know, they really need. You have to there's a balance between prioritizing the present and prioritizing the future. The present is that you need to win games, but you don't really need to win the Paris game. You really do need to win the Bristol game because it's a cup final. But prioritizing the future is making sure people are healthy. But then again, how healthy is healthy? Because everybody's always slightly injured. So you're playing 85% and 90% most of the time if you're a professional basketball player. So you know how many of these guys could have played but chose not to prioritize, or the medical staff held them out to prioritize the future. It's a kind of a slightly complex load management type thing going on, and it's easier in the NBA because they're playing 82 games, so it doesn't really matter. And here it's a little bit different because the games are kind of herky-jerky in their schedule, and you've really got to try and plan it quite carefully. And players have to know their own bodies. But also, you know, they have to know that, you know, if you're going to win stuff, you're going to have to play when you're 80% at times.
Decca led the way with 19 points, subject 17 over and 12. They were 3 of 22 from three-point range. Paris had made 13 three-pointers before London made their first.
That's legs as well, though, isn't it? You know, I mean, we all know it's legs. I mean, those guys are high-level shooters. You know, they're not shooting 3 of 20. That team's not shooting 3 of 22 again. But they may be on a Wednesday night, having played on a Monday and played on a Friday, and being down on bodies. You know, that's going to happen. I didn't like when they went to a zone. They went to a zone a bit too often for me. I get why they did. I get why they did to save energy, but you know, they're big. But if you can't defend the 3-point line, then the zone isn't really going to help you, I don't think.
Amir Sims with 15, Tyrone Wallace 13. They were 15 of 44 from 3-point range, 18 of 40 from 2-point range. Incredible way of playing the game, but mine sort of boggles. I'm not going to go full Bob Ryan here and go, this is madness. But I have it in me, put it that way. Also on Wednesday night, in the other cup semi-final, Leicester Riders 89, Caledonia Gladiators 68. No Washington for Leicester, but Mackenzie was back, and they had illness in the camp, but you wouldn't notice it. Thornton, Loving, Jackson, Whelan, threes. Leicester are up 21-8 after 5 minutes.
Yeah, institutional knowledge this was. This was all about having been there, done it, and understanding the stature of the game and the ramifications of the game and being ready for it. You add in the fact that obviously you can't let Leicester do shoot the ball well at home, but you can't let them shoot the threes at home. You can't let those guys get off. Thornton's 3 you can take, but everybody else getting too many open looks in that gym where they practice there every day, or most days they practice on that court, you know. So the repetitions that they get in that gym are substantial. They're comfortable there. And I thought Caledonia were just too callow for it, and that's not in a kind of a backing off, kind of scared way. I just thought they didn't quite know what they were into. They started off aggressive. Bailey again started off aggressive, but too aggressive, and you know, committed a couple of offensive fouls which hurt them big time. And they were both offensive fouls, being over aggressive in the post. And you know, I think the game was a little bit too big for Jimenez at this point in his career. You know, Gareth's been developing players. Gareth's kind of playing on 2 timelines. He's trying to develop a team. He's trying to win at the same time. It's kind of tough. And what we saw in this game was that when Bunyan played, Caledonia were 100 times better.
Yeah.
And you know, because I thought at one point it was going to be the Johnny Bunyan game. And the reason for that was because he was guarding.
Yeah.
He was guarding Patrick Whelan like a man.
He was plus 11 in 19 minutes in a game they lost by 21.
And it was noticeable because, you know, he played the whole third quarter because of the 4 minutes he played in the second quarter. But the difference was when Patrick Whelan's curling off a screen down to the corner, Johnny Bunyan's literally in his grill, and he got called for 2 fouls because he was there, because he knew how important, because he was playing with that urgency of not just waiting to react when somebody gets the basketball, but actually getting up and getting into them. And that's kind of the competitiveness that I didn't think Caledonia had from the beginning of the game. And I think they got a little bit cowed, a little bit kind of blown out the water by Leicester's start. Leicester's defense was better. It wasn't fantastic defense, but it was far better than Caledonia's. And, you know, once they lost Bailey, they then got to that point whereby Gareth found a unit in the second quarter where he had Onwas and Bailey on 3 fouls. So he ended up playing Fraser and Tapia together. for basically the first time this season I can remember. And kind of a couple of weird kind of lineups. And it went all right, and he went to a zone a little bit as well, and it went all right for a little bit. But the last 2 minutes again, just like the last time they played them down there, the last 2 minutes of the second quarter, they couldn't survive it.
Yeah.
And at that point, yeah, go on. Yeah.
So they got it back to Burns and Malcolm hitting a few shots. Tappe, as you say, Leicester led by 20 early in the second quarter. They got it back to 40-33, 2 minutes from half time.
That was Johnny Bunyan's minutes.
Yeah, but then Leicester scored 13 points in a row and were 53-33 up when Jackson hit a three to start the third quarter.
Yeah, I remember thinking to myself, it might have been this game, it might have been another game. No, it was the London European game. Coach Schmidt called a timeout in the first quarter when he shouldn't have, and he burned the second one halfway through the second quarter when they couldn't score for 5 minutes, and that left them in the last 2 minutes with nowhere to go when Paris went on a run. And this game was slightly similar because it's far easier when you're sat here not doing it anymore to kind of go to the casino and roll the dice.
Yeah.
Right? Far easier. And if you're a coach, and so I'm rolling the dice, I'm playing that game as Gareth, and I'm rolling the dice. I'm putting Burns in with Sloan to start with.
Yeah.
When Onwas and Bailey have got 3 fouls in the second quarter, I'm picking one of them to play. Because they've played all season. You haven't played with Tappe and Fraser there all season. I'm picking one of them to play. And if they foul out, they're going to foul out, and we're going to go down. We're going to go down having given it our best shot.
Yeah.
But what coaches do, and it's not criticism because it's generally the right way. You have to manage your resources.
Yeah.
Is that you look at it, you think, well, I can't play. I've got 2 guys on 3 fouls. I've got to sit down. I need them for the second half.
Yeah.
Problem is, if you're 53-33 after the first shot of the second half,
yeah,
don't need them for the second half. It's done.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of the balance that you're always trying to strive to keep. Which is, but I've talked about it at Leicester before. You've got to be in the fight at Leicester. If you're not in the fight, if you're down 20 at Leicester at any point, you're done.
To be fair, they made a run at it in the third quarter. This Bunyan again was great defensively, denying Whelan any space, and Sloan and Tappe were scoring at the other end. They had a 16-2 run. They got it down to 6, and you think, oh, there's a chance here. But then what happens? Loving jumper, McKenzie 3, Loving 3, and suddenly with 12 minutes to go, the Leicester are back up 14.
Yeah, there is a chance, but there isn't a chance because Leicester are comfortable. They're up 20. They know that they win in this building. They've won 20 games in a row in this building. They're up 20. All right. The coach isn't comfortable. The coaching staff aren't comfortable, but the players know in their heads that they're in a good place and they're going to win. They know that they're going to make some shots when it matters. McKenzie made a big shot when it mattered, and Loving makes a shot. And the only way I think, we'll be interested to see what happens in London, but you have to be in the fight with Leicester. You have to be toe to toe with them the whole game. And you have to see if you can take them out a little bit out of that comfort zone of knowing that, we're going to make some shots. We're going to be fine. And they didn't do that. And unfortunately, Bailey came back in and got a 4th foul quite quickly as well. And, Caledonia really could have done without scoring 117 points on Sunday against Cheshire. Because Bailey had 30 or how many more, 36. They all got everything they wanted. Everybody feels really good about themselves. Offensively, you can get whatever you want. You can go to the rim whenever you want. You score the ball whenever you want. You get out in transition. You score 40 and a quarter. That's not happening at Leicester. Players don't necessarily appreciate that there's going to be a slightly different level of defense and a slightly different requirement on them to be more precise in their movements and in their shot selection. So they keep playing as if the same way that they can drop 117 on somebody. And that's why Bailey was 2 of 14 in this game. Yeah. So, I mean, let's still not I've talked a lot about Caledonia because they weren't in the fight, and in a cup semi-final you've got to be in the fight. But Leicester just did what you'd expect them to do. Mackenzie's filled in the Washington role basically. Everybody else is doing what they're meant to do. Adekoya is again proving to be critical as kind of almost a 3rd string centre, basically, because Menzies gets some minutes and then Adekoya plays and saves Nelson Henry. But it was Leicester in a cup semi-final. I don't think the Caledonia guys, other than Bunyan, who's been there before, and maybe Fraser, but he plays the same way every time he plays. He's effectively just wait. Other than those guys, I don't think they understood what they were involved with, and sometimes you've just got to see it. You've got to go through it.
Yeah.
That's why teams with third and fourth year players win. And that's why teams with first year players don't win. Big games.
They did get it back to 7 again, but Walsh and Jackson with 3, so top and tail a 10-0 run to 73-56, and that was basically it. Loving with 18, Whelan 17. He was 6 of 9 shooting, 3 of 4 from behind the arc. Jackson was 4 of 5 3-point shooting for 14 points. Leicester were 34 of 64 from the floor and 13 of 22 from 3-point range, and that is their second most in a game this season. 13 made
13 to 22, though. I mean, that's 60%. That's because the right guys are shooting them, and they're shooting good shots when they're set off catches. They're not jacking up shots, and that's unsustainable, unsurvivable in Leicester.
Tape 8 of 8 from the floor. The only shot he missed was 1 free throw. He was 5 of 6 from the free throw line for 21 points, 5 rebounds. Sloan 16 points and 6 assists. Bailey 10 and 8, although as you said 2 of 14 from the floor. By contrast, they were 25 of 72 from the floor and 7 of 27 from 3-point range. And Bunyan's plus 11, the only player in plus numbers for them in 19 minutes as well.
Yeah, Leicester do have a switch on their own court. They've developed that kind of. You can almost see when the eyes narrow a little bit, and when that locked in switch. And I thought they were pretty good in this game in relation to that. I never thought they were going to lose.
Let's go to Friday night then. Surrey Scorchers 85, Bristol Flyers 93. Jefferson has now left the Scorchers. They've still got their injury issues. Great start by Surrey. Wango into the ring. Lawrence and Martin hitting threes. 21-10. Jumped on them early.
Yeah, well, they've changed the starting lineup again and went with Taylor and Lawrence, Wang, Ryan Martin and Sheckham Johnson. And that's without Carey playing, without Jefferson there, it kind of made that a no-brainer decision, really.
Carey was a late scratch ill. I forgot to mention that.
That's right. Yeah. I watched this game as it happened. Watched your shenanigans later on. I was more interested. It may seem weird, but I was actually more interested in this game because I was, there's Bristol away and Surrey. Where Surrey is interesting at the moment to see.
Surrey's a weird team in that you think at some point that switch is going to click. They've got the talent, and at some point they're going to get it right. And actually, watching this one back this morning, it was like this could have been the game, couldn't it?
It was the growth. They've got. You wait to see what growth they've got and basically how they manage it. And they didn't miss a shot for 5 minutes. They didn't miss it. Literally, did not miss a shot. I think they turned the ball over once in half court, and that was it. Every single thing went in. Then Boban came in, and he made a left-handed jump off the glass, and dear me. But the defense wasn't very good, and the defense was kind of. They were unable to guard some of the Bristol guys, and you've got to be able to guard Bristol one-on-one.
They should have been further ahead. End of the first quarter, should have been further ahead.
Yeah, well, that was because of GWG, wasn't it?
I was about to say, Watsongal hits 4 3-pointers, and it's a 2-point game early in the second quarter.
Yeah, but even then, I thought, Jelani Watson-Gale, that is his bread and butter. He can get to the rim. He showed a nice little left-hand drive later on in the game. But he's kind of the Steph Curry. He's the one dribble off the screen, and if you're not up on the screen, he's shooting it. And he's shooting it from relatively low in his release point, but because he's got a low release point, he's got a quick release. So you got to get there. And, you might give him the first one, you might give him the second one, but after that, you've got to be up on the screen. And what I mean by that is, big guy's got to be up on the screen. You've got to be dissuading that, even if it's a kind of a hard hedge or even a trap whereby you've got this little guy who make him pick the ball up and see where he can.
You compare it to the Leicester game and the first two early in the game, Mackenzie goes under the screen on Fletcher. Fletcher hits 2 threes, and then everything is over the screen from there. It's like, okay, he's hitting today. We can't give him that shot.
Absolutely, it's a strategy. You talk about how many you're going to give them. Basically, if he makes one, he makes one. If he makes, how many before we have to guard him? And there are some guys, frankly, that going back my time, we wouldn't guard. Even if they made 3 or 4, and a couple of times we got burnt on it.
Yeah.
But most times we didn't, because it gives you an extra guy to guard the people who are more likely to be shooting the ball. Albeit I still have nightmares about the name Jarella Coro, who was 11 of 62 from the 3-point line, playing the coolest game in Earth in Manchester, and that green floor in the 5-side pitches.
Yeah.
Said he's going to make
It'll
6 out of
suck
6
it
against
home.
us. And I've got Scott Martin standing there saying, "Do you want me to guard him?" No. No, the number says he's going to miss the next one. He never missed. And we won by a point because Barry Webster rimmed an 18-foot on the buzzer. That was the luckiest thing. That would have been utterly on me. But there's an advantage in not guarding somebody, or in that's not a disrespecting. That's just playing the numbers, playing the game. You know, which is if you're not likely to make shots, then we're going to play off you, and we're going to clog the lane. We're going to make it harder for somebody who is going to be shooting the ball. And it's happened. It does, and if you look carefully for fans, if you look carefully, they'll see it happening in games. You've got to know the players, but you'll see it happen in certain games. Luke Bazumbrus, somebody who struggled this year to shoot the ball, and teams are playing off him. Some of the centers, Malcolm Delpesh, Marcus Delpesh, some of those guys as well, who aren't liable to shoot the ball. The defense doesn't go out there to them; they stay off.
The only pushback I would say to the fans is not everybody gets that right, and sometimes you see a guy left wide open, you go, "What's he doing wide open?" And that's a defensive breakdown, not a strategy. If it's Mark Loving or Patrick Whelan or Zach Jackson, it's a defensive breakdown.
Exactly, and that's why what the smartness is an overused term because it means a lot of different things, but the ability of a player to recognize who they're guarding and when they're guarding and what space and where they're meant to be is something that you wouldn't, unless you're specifically looking for it as a coach, fans generally wouldn't see and wouldn't appreciate because the player's not actually doing anything, right? But the ball might get reversed to somebody who's a non-shooter. And that player at that point needs to know, the defender needs to know, is he a shooter, is he a non-shooter? Do I have to run him out? That's a split-second decision. And they've got to make that decision as to how to guard him. And, that kind of basketball knowledge is ingrained in the successful teams, ingrained in the players who've been around a while and played at a high level. It's not ingrained in the rookies.
Yeah.
Another reason why, veterans generally win.
Sometimes you need to see it, don't you? You need to see it with your own eyes. You can be told, but you just need to see it with your own eyes. Let's go back to this game, and let's actually just spin it forward to the fourth quarter because it was back and forth, this one. 5 minutes to play, 5 points from Taylor put Surrey up 80 to 76. Bell fouled on an and one with 2:40 to go. He misses that, but Delpesh with the offensive rebound and putback, so they get 4 points out of the play.
Actually, it was Miller. Miller made the play. Miller came in, might not be sure on the stats, but Miller came in from the weak side on the rebound. He kind of saved it and he threw it back to Delpesh for the layup.
And it's 80-84. Johnson and Delpesh trade and one, so it's 84-87. Both of them made them. Neither of them are great free throw shooters, so notable that they both made it at the end when it mattered. 2 minutes to go, 4-point game. And then 1:44 to go. Wang stepped out of bounds. This was a horrible one to turn over, really.
Yeah, I mean, there was some stuff going on with even in the last 5 minutes, you could see the kind of the uncertainty amongst Surrey and precisely what their identity is. I was surprised that for the most of the fourth quarter, in fact, most of the game, Ryan Martin was defending Bristol's fours because Bell and King had a step on him. It's very difficult. Ryan Martin's probably 6'8", 6'9", good rebounder, excellent size. Shackham Johnson's like 6'7", more athletic. Shackham Johnson was defending Delpesh, and Martin was defending like King or Bell, depending on who was playing the four. And if you watch the game, Martin fouls out. And Martin's a critical player for them offensively because he plays the court. Now he fouls out with about 3 minutes to go, and all his fouls.
It was a bit more than that. I think it was about 4:30.
All his fouls are the same. They're all kind of hands-on, trying to guard somebody who's quicker than him. And I just didn't think that matchup worked for them at all. And I was surprised that he didn't go back and end up guarding Delpesh. Maybe Johnson couldn't do it either. I don't know. Who knows? But that for me hurt them. Then you had the kind of Lloyd wasn't sure. I say he wasn't sure. He ended up with, at one point, Bazumbru, Taylor, and this is all in the last 4 minutes. Bazumbru, Taylor, and Lawrence in the game at the same time. And then Dobbs, and then with Wang at the 4. And then Bazumbu came out with about 2 minutes to go, and Dobbs came in. And then Wang played the 3, and Dobbs is the 4, and Johnson's a 5. And that's looking kind of for that. I think they're looking for that lineup. They haven't got their closing lineup yet. That's what I'm trying to say. And that's a big thing.
Yeah.
A big thing. It's probably even more important than your starting lineup. Who is your closing lineup? Who is in a perfect world? Who are you going to go to?
Yeah.
Now, Bazumbu hasn't played much. He certainly hasn't played much as part of a 3-guard lineup. He's primarily been playing, the point guard when he's come in. And so he comes in as kind of on the wing, and they were kind of playing off him a little bit. And then that moves Wang up a position, which means if you move up a position, you've got a different role in the offenses. And then Dobbs comes in, which means that Wang is back at the 3. And then it just seemed that they didn't know where they were going with their offense.
Yeah.
They didn't have that consistency of understanding, and that's possibly because Martin had fouled out. Because Martin is there. Martin's a guy who's going to make a play. It might not be the right play. But he's got a real chance of making a play.
Whatever their closing unit in, it's going to have him.
It's going to have him in, because the spaces are core. He'd knocked down 3 threes in this game. He gives them, he's somebody who's not afraid to make a play, to go out there and try and impact the game. And without him, and with the kind of the Taylor Lawrence thing, which is a work in progress, they haven't played much together at all, so they're going to have to figure each other out. It kind of ended up being, let's throw it to Wang, and then Wang, who was very good in the game, got to the rim at will. He's not closed many games. He's a young player. And he stepped on the line.
Was a really, because he had a chance to attack, and he sort of backed off and then stepped on the line.
But they couldn't get stopped either, Dan. That was
no. So Bell goes down. His foul makes 1 for 2. Timeout, advance the ball. They missed a shot at the end of the shot clock, Taylor, and then that was basically the game.
It was 80-76 with about 3 minutes to go.
83-87 with 2 minutes to go.
Right. So they've. Oh, I think that's 5 minutes. Bristol scored a lot of points. Bristol.
Okay. Yeah. 80 to 84, I think, with 2:40 to go. So they scored 9 points in the last 2:40, 9-5.
I think Surrey were up 80-76, so they scored the 8 before that as well.
Yeah, sorry, they were 80-76 with 5 to play.
Yeah, so 17 minutes in the last 5 minutes, 17 points in the last 5 minutes. Even with foul shots, that's too many at home. Basically scoring every time down. And Bristol, Watson Gale, he obviously was on fire, and he, of course, he's a really interesting player, because you have to contextualize everything, right? Watson Gale on Monday didn't score a point against London, or if he did, it might right at the end. They shut him down. They absolutely shut him down. So he has come out, and after that game, and there's 2 ways a young player can go with that. They can blame everybody else, or they can whinge about their life. They can decide that they want to be a landscape gardener, or they can come out and show people what they've got, a bounce back, a real bounce back. To come back the way he did in that game, albeit Surrey's defense is different than London's, to come back and is a character thing. That's not about whether he made shots. That's a character thing. That's him coming back saying, "Look, I'm coming with the bench, bang, bang, bang. I'm here. You need to take care of me. I'm not going to be going scoreless ever again." And so that's really encouraging for Bristol, but also for GB, because he's obviously he's a GB player. Everybody else, King, Bell, Delpesh, they kind of did what they do, and they did it comfortably, and that was the problem, I thought, offensively. Was that Surrey couldn't get stops.
So Lawrence had 17.7 assists. Wang 7 of 10 shooting for 17.7 rebounds, 6 assists. Jack Domney and Johnson 12 points each, a combined 9 for 9 shooting. And then
they've got good talent. They got good speed. They got good talent.
At some point,
they should stop 100 on people, but they got to get some stops, and they got to get some baskets in transition, and they're not getting that at the moment. Not getting that stops.
I'm still hanging on to my pick of they are the surprise team of the year. I'm surprised by them now, to be fair, but at some point I'll be surprised by them for the right reasons. Watson Gale 24 points, 6 of 9 from 3-point range. Delpesh 9 of 12 shooting for 19 points, and King with 15. Let's go to Glasgow, where the Caledonia Gladiators beat Sheffield Sharks 77-60. story of this game was the start and the end of the first half. Caledonia scored the first 11 points of the game. Sheffield had a bit of a run, and then they scored the last 11 points of the first half and were 40 to 27 ahead. So they scored 22 points in 6 minutes at the top and tail of the half.
Yeah, I'm in Grinch mode again, I'm afraid.
Oh,
That
yeah.
was turgid rubbish, I thought.
I did watch it. I did watch it at 1.75, which is super fast. Mark Wood sounds
But,
quite high at 1.75.
I
I'm
mean,
sure
it
we
was
all
safe.
do.
Yeah, it was safe. It was safe for me. Obviously, we had Johnny Bunyan Senior doing
Yeah.
doing it with Mark, and it was saved for me by some of his comments, including the wonderfully understated remark when his son made an open three after the Sheffield gave him about 12 feet of space in trying to defend the screen and roll. Sometimes, well, we haven't seen the scouting report. They clearly haven't seen the scouting report, which I thought was lovely. I'm being a bit harsh. It was I say it was uninteresting to watch.
Yeah.
Because Sheffield shot 9 threes in the whole game.
Yeah.
You're talking about Paris, right? Yeah, Sheffield shot
Yeah.
9 threes in the game. Now, the reason Caledonia went on the run in the first 5 minutes, was because Sheffield never threw the ball to Cook. They play a certain way, and that certain way has been, relatively effective. You got to throw the ball into Bennett Cook early. It was 11-0. Atiba called a timeout, and the first time Bennett Cook touched the ball was after that timeout.
Yeah. And he got fouled.
Right? He got fouled, yeah. I'm pretty sure I know what Atiba was saying in that timeout. We've been doing this all season. Why would we go away from this now? This is the way you play. They are really guard light. Rod Glasgow really struggled in this. He's got a heavy load in this game. You end up with Channel Banks, who's probably not a two guard, but he's certainly not a point guard. You haven't to play the point. Young Sacco came in and gave them really good energy, but he's undersized, and he's still got a lot. I think he's 1 of 6 from the foul line, so he's giving them good energy. He's got to finish at the foul line. To be an impactful player. And if they're not going to throw the ball inside, then where are the points coming from? That's the reality of it.
Yeah.
Whereas Caledonia were obviously back on their in the comfortable environments of the Emirates Arena, where they don't lose much, and they were just I thought comfortable from the beginning of the game. Offensively, they were able to get what they wanted. Sheffield's defense did pick up in the second quarter, and again, I think Mark Wood and John Bunyan said something about that. But that's too late. You can't be spotting these teams 15-point runs when you're only averaging 63 a game. It's just not going to work. I thought there was some. It was a bit. Yeah, it was nice to see Johnny playing, actually getting back in the rotation and playing a bit more. Jordan Burns played 12 minutes in this game, didn't score. And they won by 20.
Yeah. There was some weird when I looked at the box stats last night, there was some weird stuff that you just go, that doesn't really make any sense. But
no, it didn't.
But they win by 17, so it doesn't really matter.
They're always in that kind of position where they win by 17.
Yeah.
And the problem is that there's just no spirit ability in that Sheffield team.
No,
none at all. Ratinho is basically playing enormous amounts of minutes and hardly shooting the ball.
Yeah,
he's a standalone shooter who relies on the ball to be rotated to him, so he can either shoot it or attack the closeout. And they're not getting any advantage off the penetration. They're not getting any advantage off the kickouts. And whilst they do score the ball inside, when the ball goes inside, it doesn't often come out. So it's not like it's kind of going into the Coke, Oganyemi, and they're throwing it back out to a shooter to knock down a three. That's why they're only shooting 9 threes. So that's not sustainable. Obviously the caveat is all
Nelson. I want for Christmas is Saeed.
Nelson, yeah. That's the caveat to all this, but it's there's a slight roster structure flaw there when with one player down. It impacts you quite so much. It's probably on the back of them having the 3 centers.
Yeah.
If I'm being blunt, I understand why they did that, and I think with a full group, they have a way of playing, and that's fine. But they struggle. The challenge for me watching the fourth quarter was, are they going to get to 50? Then was, are they going to get to 60? you know. And
Well,
that's
I got a text at half time telling me what the record low in Glasgow was for Sheffield, so they weren't
yeah, so they
overly
weren't far
confident.
off.
They beat that, by the way, just. But
Just
yeah, yeah.
so yeah,
Never in single figures in the second half, so as comfortable as you like. So
yeah.
Sloan with 21 points, 8 assists, Bailey 15 and 10 on West 11 and 7, Banks with 17, Cook with 10. Sheffield shooting splits 34, 22, 56.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a slightly outsized ladies' clothing, isn't it? Um, slightly.
Yeah. Right,
Uh,
so we've come to the end of Sunday night breakdown
nothing
for
more to say.
this week. There's no more games left to do. All my little nephews have arrived, so I've got to go off and do all the family stuff. And
After the pictures, yeah.
there
Okay,
we go.
how
Yeah,
long we got?
yeah. Well, minus half an hour, I think, is the answer to that. Let's do this last game. Manchester Giants 82, Leicester Riders 89 after overtime. Let's start with mea culpa. I made two mistakes in commentary in not getting the rules right, which is unforgivable because it's the thing that drives me nuts when I watch other people do commentary in any sport is
Well,
get
I've
the
been, I've
bloody
had,
rules right, and I got
yeah,
two of them wrong. So I
I
apologize
mean,
for that.
it's all right. I mean, I accept your apology. I mean, I've
Yeah,
had three other people contact me this morning
yeah,
offering this the podcast instead of you. I'm
yeah.
considering all offers, but at the moment you're still in pole position.
Yeah, yeah,
No, hey, it happens. Certainly one of them I didn't know. So, I knew the new unsportsmanlike in the last 2 minutes. I didn't know either. It's coming
yeah,
on the 1st of October. So, the reality is there's no one who ever knows the rules as well as the refs.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's the
That's what
reality.
they're
No
there
one
for.
is, that's what they're there for, and that's what they learn. And they have to do exams and tests, and that's what they're
What I
challenged on.
will
So,
say is, on the first one, the disqualification foul and the wrong guy taking the free throws.
yeah.
The referees are supposed to get the right person on the free throw line. They're not supposed to let the wrong person go
Well,
onto
I'm
the
not sure about that, but I
free
don't
throw
know.
line.
Ah,
And B, I kind of understand in the melee how you would think, well, actually anybody can shoot the free throw, because that's what I thought. That's what I got wrong, is I thought
well, not
anybody can
every.
shoot the free throw. But if it's a contact
Yeah,
disqualification, which that one was, then the person who is fouled has to shoot the free throw.
yeah, it's in
Uh,
sportsmanlike with
But
bells on,
yeah,
basically.
yeah. But the final bit is, man, that is a disproportionate punishment for like a mistake, isn't it? Because the ball goes back to you lose the point, you don't get the second free throw, and the ball goes back. And
Well,
if you think they changed the unsportsmanlike one, the one that I got wrong at the end, because it was a disproportionate punishment to the infringement, so that basically you just get one free throw and then you carry on. And they changed the technical from 2 free throws to 1 free throw and you carry on. I know in most cases, if they do that wrong, you're actually only losing the free throws because you wouldn't normally have possession of the ball if it
yeah.
was a normal foul. But to lose the ball and both free throws for the wrong person lining up seems a bit
Oh well,
harsh.
I'm kind of against you on that, because it's something we were fully aware of, and it's actually my job when I was on the
Yeah.
bench. Um, there is nothing in the rules which says the referees. We'll get to the referees kind of.
There is something
They have to ensure.
the thing about the I can't remember the exact line, but it definitely within the thing about there it's the referee's job to remember we talked about this with Bristol earlier in the
Yeah.
year. The referee's job to make sure there isn't 6 players on the court. So
Yes.
if you get to a technical because there's 6 players on the court, the referees have made a mistake by
Yeah.
allowing somebody on and not somebody not going off.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
you've seen it before in the history of the game where people try and put a better foul shooter, which I don't
Yeah.
think Leicester were doing, by the way. I just think they thought anybody could shoot the free
Well,
throw.
I'll tell you what I thought. What I thought happened as follows, and we'll get to the rest of it in a minute.
Yeah.
But basically, it's up as far as I'm concerned. It was always my view when I was on the bench. It is the fouls. It's not for the referees to tell the foul shooting team who should be shooting. No harm in the foul shooting team asking the referees who should be shooting. But clearly, because you heard it off camera, you heard Rob shout, "It's a technical." So Rob thought it was a technical, as opposed to a disqualification. So he thought anyone could shoot it. So yeah, absolutely, they weren't trying to gain advantage by putting McKenzie on there. I mean, they'd had Jackson for some reason shoot a technical foul shot earlier in the game.
Yeah, that didn't make any sense either.
So there's no way they were doing that. But it was always something I was incredibly alive to. And it happened a couple of times with us. And what you had to do was you had to wait. It was actually a tactic to wait for the wrong guy to shoot the first shot.
Yeah.
You'd stand up and give it merry hell.
Yeah.
And say, look, that's not the right guy. You've got the wrong guy.
Yeah.
At that point,
Because
now
my
in the
recollection
game,
after the game is we had a discussion about this last year in a Newcastle game where the referees then did the wrong thing.
they gave them the ball back. They
Gave the ball
let
back,
the right guy shoot it. Yeah, and it was wrong. They got it wrong. So I kind of, by the letter of the law, and I don't have any issue with what happened, because ultimately it is the foul shooting team's responsibility to get the right guy on the court. Now, that's not to say it's great game management what's going on, okay, by the refs.
Yeah.
Okay. Because, and we'll get to that in a minute. Actually, if we go back to the beginning of the game, I think it's probably easier working through it than doing it that way.
Yeah. So let's start, because we spent enough time talking about where I've cocked up. Let's go to where the players have cocked up and all the turnovers and missed shots. No Lee, obviously, still for Manchester. Leicester with illness in the camp. Thornton didn't travel. There were 3 players we were told were going to be game time decisions, but all played. And just looking at Patrick Whelan's shooting, you could see he was not right. So much to get through. I almost want to skip through the first half. Leicester finished slightly better, had a small lead.
Yeah, well, I'll say I thought it was a great game. I'm hearing lots of stuff about, it was all disgrace, it's embarrassment. I thought it was brilliant, right? I thought
everything everything happened. It was just a mad game. Yeah.
I then sat through Glasgow and
Sheffield. It was better than that.
20 Leicester Manchesters, I suppose. The one card. So let's not all get too hoity-toity and too up ourselves in relation to the right way and the right thing. That was great. It was great entertainment. It was great storylines. It was very competitive from the beginning. And both teams were there and ready to play. And as you say, Fletch came out and knocked down a couple of threes early. And when he knocks down a couple of threes early, that means he's ready to go.
Yeah.
It means he's locked into it all and he's ready to go. And then Dirk is playing that way. And you've also got all the emotion with Green and with Robertson, all those guys. And you've got that against Leicester, who are coming off playing on Wednesday night. They've got some illness in the camp that, Washington's basically playing, but he's not playing because he's not right. So they've got Manchester, even without Lee, have got a real shot at this game. They went back and forwards, as you say. I was surprised. Vince's rotations occasionally befuddled me. He brought Callum Jones in first. He hasn't played much this year. I was wondering who else was on the bench when I was watching it. Because Robinson didn't come in till later. Nick Lewis didn't come in till later. But Callum came in early. Leicester struggled a little bit with their bench as well, but then Adekoya came in basically and bailed them out in the second quarter. Made a couple of threes. What else happened in the first half? Any interest? Menzies got confident sportsmanlike, which I think was right because it was a two-handed hard foul. He got a hard foul with his on the wrist, on the arm with his right hand, but his left hand went up to the shoulder, so he was never. I
agree with you on that one. I think the other ones he kind of is a little unfortunate in the fact that because he's 7'3" and it's the 6'8" guy who's guarding him. Yeah. If I was 6'8" guy, and this is what seems to be the defensive tactic, is as soon as he turns, go down and see if you can get a charge. And I think that's an issue for him because he's so much bigger than everybody else. The
one where he stuck his backside in, that was borderline. But
I mean, it could be a foul. But I'm just making the general point for him. I think actually he would have been better served because Vince was whenever Nelson Henry sat down, he sat Robertson down in the first half. And I think Menzies would have been better served having somebody of a similar stature to him guarding him because it would be less of a...
That's always been the issue in the BBL with
it is.
Really good guys. Because, half the time you're guarding people who are mismatches. So are you good enough and powerful enough to dominate that mismatch? For instance, Mo Walker would be bigger than Taj Green and Mo Walker would get the ball down low and score.
Yeah.
Right? But he's not the same size that Aaron Menzies is. Aaron Menzies has different issues in relation to his ability to kind of put the ball on the floor and score. Aaron Menzies needs to be closer to the front of the rim to catch it. And that is good. But the bigger issue he has is defensively because it's very difficult for someone who's 7'2" to be guarding Taj Green.
Yeah.
Online, and that is tough. And so I was just sticking to the unsportsmanlike, that was that one, which was all right, I thought.
Yeah.
There was a weird call whereby they, this comes down to game management, where they gave Patrick Whelan an extra foul shot because Ramon Fletcher was inside the 3-point line at the time of that. And it was the first of 2 foul shots. By the time Whelan shot the ball, Fletcher was actually outside.
Yeah.
He was probably a foot inside when the ball was delivered to.
I must admit, in real time, I didn't even see it.
No, he didn't. I had to watch it back. And so what happens is the ball's delivered to Whelan by the baseline ref, and he shoots it. By the time he shot it, Fletcher's outside. But at the time the ball was delivered to him, he's inside. He's about a foot inside. He's not in Whelan's line of sight. He's not saying anything to Whelan. He's not impacting the play. And it's the baseline ref who throws Whelan the ball, who then calls it.
Mm.
And I'm thinking, well, just manage the game. Just tell him to get out. You don't throw him the ball until he's out.
Yeah.
It's the type of thing which is it just seemed to me to be a little bit unnecessary. So that's kind of a game management thing, and all the players look at that. Then we got into the third quarter, and
what a weird quarter this was. So
yeah.
Manchester can't score. Leicester go 12-2 for 5 minutes, and then Leicester just decided to turn the ball over almost every time down. Manchester get the momentum, and it's a 14-0 run, and it's a 1-point game.
I thought there was a couple of things. I mean, one, we missed the most important part of the whole game, which was Fletcher's hamstring.
Yeah.
Because he pulled up at the end of the second quarter. Whilst he played the third and fourth quarter, he never attacked once. He shot a few jump shots, but he never stretched out. So he's got, he played within himself, no question about that. I've watched him enough to know. So that impacted a lot about the way Manchester were able to play. I think Leicester got tired a little bit, and also their lineups. Eventually the lack of depth. I say lack of depth. Eventually, Evan Walsh has played great, but he's playing his 3rd game in a week as well. Adekoya maybe isn't quite as sprightly either, and I just thought they got a little bit tired and Menzies basically struggled the whole game. So in Manchester are the opposite of Sheffield. They're totally spiritable.
Yeah.
They come up and they pull up. Fletcher makes a couple of threes. Dirk pulls up, makes a 3, and suddenly, as you say, it's a 14-0 run, and the hooping and hollering and Robertson's making shots in this game, which is either swishing them or airballing them, which isn't bad. I mean, it's good percentages.
Yeah.
So that energy comes up. In amongst that time, we have, I think, we have the first instance of kind of a bit of stuff going on where Menzies again kind of wraps up Green, and Green goes up and somehow manages to stick his arm out at 90 degrees and clock Walsh in the face, which was a tough one to call at that point, because I didn't see it straight away, and I thought my initial thought was watching it, well, that's Menzies gone. I thought that was unsportsmanlike on Menzies because they kind of grabbed him quite high, and that was kind of incidental kind of contact on the far end with Walsh. And then you see the replay, and we'll get to this in a minute, then they look to me like, well, actually, if that's incidental, what's your harm doing out there?
And
on top of that, and it's very tough because you don't want to judge players on prior acts. You don't. We know Green's a bit of a bit emotional, to use a basketball euphemism. But you don't want to judge them on prior acts. And I thought the refs were probably, on what I saw, just about right in giving him the very benefit of the doubt on that. On what I saw the first time, I didn't see it either. What subsequently went on probably indicated that maybe they weren't, but they don't know what they're going after. So Green, and you can't take in a guy's what you guys done in the past. I'm afraid you just can't. It's not fair on the players. So as I say, so they called that as just a genuine, a straight up foul on Menzies. Right. As I say, it didn't really matter because he never came back in the game anyway. It was his 4th foul, so wouldn't matter. And let Green off for whatever happened for hitting Walsh. Then the next thing that goes on is down the other end. We have Jackson makes a shot on the his little scoop shot. Green comes down and ends up throwing him onto the floor.
Robertson.
Sorry, was that Robertson?
Robertson
No,
was no, that was the last 2 minutes. Have you getting to the disqualification or no?
no,
Or
no, no,
you're
no,
still
no,
before that?
no.
Okay.
There was no sports
Okay.
night
Yeah,
before
yeah.
that. The sports night before that, and it was
Yeah,
Green.
yeah.
And Green kind of, so Green, I think, having got away with the last one, refs saw the refs saw that after Jackson made the shot, gave the unsportsmanlike against Green. Initially, I thought, oh, that's a bit harsh. I think you guys did as well. You thought maybe Nelson Henry flew out. Then I looked back and I thought, no, you just pushed him out of the way for no reason. You just threw him out for no reason. And at this point, you're thinking, oh, this is where the game's changing because the discipline's going. And throughout all of this, the one thing that remains absolutely stable in this game is that Leicester kept their discipline whilst Manchester lost theirs.
Yeah.
Right?
So there's a massive loss of discipline over there. I apologize if there's a load of wild nephews and children going mad in the background, but it is Christmas Eve.
They don't know what they're witnessing, do they? They don't know the importance of it.
Well, exactly. Yeah. So let's get to the end of it. Leicester out to 63-70 with 5 minutes to play. Fletcher then has 5 in a 9-0 run as Manchester move in front, 72-70, and then 154 to go. Robertson.
We missed one. We missed one. There was another because Nelson Henry fouls Green on a rebound.
Yeah.
And Green turns around and with either, if you're a Manchester fan, protects the ball, or if you're a Leicester fan, throws an elbow.
Yeah.
And then, and this really quite actually frustrated and even slightly annoyed me, because he didn't catch Nelson Henry full on. If he had, he wouldn't have got up. But he certainly got enough of a glancing blow to have an impact. Nelson Henry is pretty much a straight up guy in relation to the way that he plays the game. There's very few frills. There's little in the way of unnecessary emotion. There's little in the way of gloating. He's the league centre of the year for the past 2 years. Basically just somebody who comes to work and does his job and plays the game. So he was called for the foul, and perhaps kindly, because I think Green already had the unsportsmanlike. Nothing was called on Green. And again, I wasn't sure when I saw it first time on the replay. I would have called him for it, an unsportsmanlike, because he recklessly endangered the safety of Nelson Henry, from my perspective, by elbowing the way that he did by pivoting the way that he did with the ball. But Green comes down the court, and your camera catches him doing the kind of the crying eyes sign.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
And I thought to myself, that was really desperately immature, and disrespectful. And why is immaturity bad? Immaturity is not necessarily bad. Immaturity allows you to play with kind of freedom. It allows you to play with energy. It allows you to play without a care in the world. And I'm not being moralistic or hypocritical or anything of that nature when I'm criticizing it. It doesn't help you win, right? It loses you. You lose. You're thinking about things that you should not be thinking about. You're doing stuff you should not be doing, right? That to me, was it's the difference between the guys who how many times have you seen Mo Walker or Jabril Adekoya flex when they make a basket with 2 people draped off them? They don't do that. They just get down the court, right? Because they're concentrating on the next play. Mark Loving dunks a ball in transition in the 3rd quarter. He just jogs back down the court. You wouldn't know it wasn't, he wasn't going to get the milk, this is the difference. This is winning basketball. This is the mentality. This is what we do, right? Winning basketball is not getting a dumb unsportsmanlike foul, throwing an elbow at another guy, and then deciding you're going to take the mickey out of him on TV and doing the crying eyes thing and say, "Oh, he's a baby," which is basically what he's saying. Now that's embarrassing, and and it's embarrassing, but it also impacts Manchester's chances of winning the game because it's putting Green, who is one of their most important players, at risk of being fouled out. It also indicates that perhaps he's not as utterly focused on the things he should be focused on as he is. So there was that. Now, all of these calls, these unsportsmanlike fouls we're talking about, and the disqualification we're about to get to, on first view, I wouldn't take any issue with what the refs called.
Yeah.
Right, every single one. And we're told, oh well, they lost control of this, etc. Why doesn't this happen in Europe, etc.? They don't have video to look at.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
don't,
Yeah.
they don't have the opportunity to go back. They're saying it first time fast. Is it what's incidental, what's deliberate?
Yeah.
Right. Players don't generally, apart from what we're going to say and talk about in a second, players don't generally walk up to people with a stick and wouldn't hit them over the back of the head and make it easy for the refs.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
My clients, right, and not the players, right. It's they're generally called judgment calls, and to see them in full speed, to see that the push by Green and not be able to review them, it puts the refs at an incredible, I think, disadvantage in calling it, and you can't compare apples to the oranges. Every possible in sports, like in Europe, they go to the video.
Yeah.
Right. And every end of quarter shot clock situation, they go to the video, right? And we don't do it yet. So let's not hold these guys up to a higher and unfair standard. That said, we're going to get to the disqualification thing as well. I think their game management should have been better in relation to what happened next, which was Roberson.
Yeah, so 154 to go. Roberson, there'd been a few incidences of coming together between those two players. I remember there was one where there was a bit of a grab as Jackson tried to get away, and then he kind of pushed back, and it was one of them. But the referees sort of let it play. They didn't even call a foul either way and didn't stop the game or whatever. So anyway, it ends up with Robertson banging into him and then knocking him to the ground and then basically stamping on him, not trying to jump over him, put it that way.
Yeah, and again, it was one you need to look at 4 times, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that they got the interpretation of it right with what they saw. What I will say is that, what really strikes me is out of that incident was firstly 2 things. One, you look at Ramon Fletcher's reaction, right? Because he threw him the ball and you see him, he threw him the ball and he watched what Roberson did and his hands go like that and he turns around like that and he looks at Vince and he says, why? And it's almost like this is losing basketball. He knows you're up by 2 with a minute and a half to go in the game, and that's what you're going to do, right? So, that's the difference between ultimately being a professional winner and being someone who's just out there playing basketball. The second thing that is the difference between being a professional winner and being someone that's out playing basketball is Zach Jackson, because Zach Jackson got up and walked away, right? And you can tell me, you can give me the name of about 500 British basketball players not have got up and walked away.
Yeah.
They would have been into it and there could have been double disqualifications and all kicked off. But he's too smart and too focused on the job of winning to allow the machismo and the emotion of it all to impact him. And that's the difference ultimately between these 2 teams. And even the team, when I say the teams, it's not even the teams, it's between Roberson and Green and everybody else. Because, you can't say that about Dirk Williams, we talked about it, but you can't say that about Fletch. You can't say that about Nick Lewis. You can't say that about Callum Jones. It's not the teams, right? It's those guys.
Yeah.
They're important to that team, and they haven't bought in to what you need to do, to what you need to sacrifice to win. And sometimes you've got to sacrifice your ego and you've got to sacrifice your machismo. And what Roberson did was utterly ridiculous, right? He had the ball, he passed it out to the wing, and he did basically battering ram. He ran over. He's like it was a American football. And he's defensive end. He literally ran him over, put his shoulder in his back. Right now, watching it back and Fletch saw it as we saw. For me, that's an automatic on sports from like the first call. They're just running him over as an unsportsmanlike. Not a play on the ball. It's unnecessary. It's like excessive violence. In relation to the DQ, I'm kind of on the fence a little bit. I'd like the ref to have seen it because it looked like a stamp, but but as you say, he didn't get out of the way. That was the thing. I don't think it was. I've seen stamps. I watch lots of CCTV, and it wasn't. I wouldn't put it down as an overly malicious act. If he did land his foot anywhere, it was kind of towards the top end of his shoulder, kind of underneath his arm. And the argument is, he has a responsibility to get out of the way, I suppose, at that point. But if you put them both together,
that's the thing.
if you put them both now the refs didn't. The refs, I think, called a straight foul,
Called an offensive foul and then a
a
disqualification.
disqualification, which to me, I think I'd have just either disqualified him on the base. Well, it would be an unsportsmanlike and then a disqualification if you thought it was a stamp. And unsportsmanlike on its own if you didn't think it was a stamp, or if you thought you thought you're going to put them both together, just a disqualification on its own. But they don't get to look at the video.
No.
So again, I got no. It's just what struck me was it was just a non. And you can say, oh, the refs have lost control. No, the refs didn't lose control. Robertson lost control. Put it on the players. Robertson did something ridiculous. And it wasn't the first time in the game that as you say, he'd been spoiling for it.
Yeah.
And I just thought it showed the difference between the teams, and Rob has this, obviously Rob has this, relatively carefully cultivated image of, of kind of little angry young man, in his Italian suit on the sideline, running up and down and, and arguing with everybody. He didn't argue in this case. He wasn't causing that. He wasn't kicking off in this case because he knew that at this point in time, this is the smartness of the coach. His team didn't need that. His team needed to keep playing and keep disciplined and to let the refs kind of handle it out. So I thought the team that kept its control won and made the smart plays, and the team that didn't, that lost control, lost. And ultimately, that's all that matters.
So out of that, we get to the point where the free throws came and Kimball took it. It should have been Zach Jackson. So Leicester ended up losing possession of the ball and not scoring. So they were still 1 point down at that point.
And that's just why I said the game, just on the game management point I was making earlier about the foul shot that didn't count, because the missed foul shot that they got back because someone was in the circle. Yeah, at that point in time, okay, from the refereeing perspective, you don't have to point at the player who has to go on, and you don't send somebody away from the foul line. But it would be a lot smarter if they did. You just have a word in somebody's ear and say, look, Jackson's shooting. I've got no problem. No one would have a problem with that.
No.
Because it takes away, it just kills the situation. And there are times whereby, I think in EuroLeague, they go back and they'll come back from the monitor and they'll say, right, the foul is on 7, number 12 is shooting. So it's not that it's prohibited from doing that. It's a game management thing. And the further point I'm going to make about game management, and this is to kind of get you off the hook a little bit as well, is that when we're in the NBA, these calls are being announced.
The
referees are going to the announcer at the table, or even at times going to the people on doing the TV and telling them this is the call that we are making, and they're announcing it on microphone to the crowd. Okay, again, there's a reason that the NBA does stuff this way. It's getting the information out. It wouldn't take a minute for a referee to go to the announcer and say, this is what we've called, because a foul on him, disqualification on him will be 2 shots for number 12. Everybody knows. And that's not done. So, there's a lot in this game for the I know the new chief executive officer hasn't really talked much about the basketball side of it. He's talked about the content side of it. And maybe he wants to keep this type of stuff going on so the content gets good. But there's a lot in this game in relation to easy wins that they can clean up. The video referrals for sportsmen, not a problem. The ability to keep the refs communicating with the crowd, the stuff that's already done everywhere else. In other places. There's no reason why if other places are doing it and they're successful, there's no reason why we can't have that. We're not still in the 1980s. And that would have then clarified everything, and it would have just avoided the crap storm that comes as a result. So we've been through that. So Mackenzie shoots it when he shouldn't. And the crazy thing is, it was one of the refs that spotted it, not Manchester. And if I'd been Manchester bench, I'd been up shouting about it. It was a ref. So the argument is, well, why is the ref spotted it after he shot it instead of before?
Because he wasn't the one giving the ball.
Because he wasn't the one giving the ball, you see. So that's where the kind of your game management comes in.
And the other thing I think about it, in defense of the referees, because there was the melee and then there was the referees talking for a minute or two to work out what they were going to do. And then there was, there was a lot going on. So the time between the actual foul being committed and the free throws or free throw being attempted was quite a long. So it's easy to just
there's
zone out of it.
It's like a 5 or 6 stage decision process you've got to make. And this is why they go to the monitors, so they can actually do it. They can do it logically and meticulously. which you
Yeah.
can't do if you're actually not sure what's happened. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Nobody's
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
We're still
100%
not
sure.
sure whether he deliberately stood on him, and we've watched
Yeah.
it 6 times.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So they're having to work out what you think happened first, and then after that, you've got to figure out what's happening next. And that's why the easy win is there. There's a monitor there. You're looking at it. Let the rest
Yeah.
go look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Dead.
So 129 to go. Adekoya at the free throw line goes 1 for 2. The game is tied at 75. That was actually the final score. Nobody scored in the last 90 seconds of the game. Loving was denied, which on commentary from my angle looked like a foul, but I was slightly less convinced when I watched it back from
No,
the
I think he got the ball. I think it was
camera
on the
on the
ball.
other side. But
Yeah.
from my side, it looked like a foul. But
I think it's
um,
because he did a double clutch, but the double
yeah,
clutch came because the hand was on the ball, so he tried to
yeah,
get the ball. I was all right with that call.
or no call.
No,
And
yeah.
then Fletcher missed at the end of the shot clock, and then Green blocks McKenzie driving to the basket with a couple of
That's very
seconds to
big by
go.
Green, yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Leicester
Well,
generally.
I would have liked him to go after the rebound after he blocked the shot, though. That was my only thing because there
Well,
was still a
again,
couple of seconds to
those
go.
guys who flex,
Mm.
I agree with that. Leicester put the ball in McKenzie's hands a lot at the end. They really do
Yeah,
trust him. Really
yeah,
quite interesting, even though he's not even been starting for them. But no, it was by that point in time there was obviously a lot that was moving in the game.
yeah.
A lot that was going on.
Speaking of McKenzie, let's go into overtime now. McKenzie hit a big three with 2.5 minutes to go to make it a 4-point game, 78-82.
Nick Lewis was the biggest story in overtime because
Yeah.
basically Manchester had no offense in overtime. They had no offense and they just threw the ball around the perimeter and somebody jacked up with 3. That was because their offense is based around Fletcher and his penetration, and Fletcher wasn't able to penetrate because his hamstring weren't right. So I think you commented on it during the overtime that their looks weren't very good, and then McKenzie bailed out Lewis with 3 foul shots when they're at 1. And Lewis misses all 3 and then fouls somebody on the rebound. Just nuts.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a losing play. Whichever way you put it. It's just that it's not the fact that you miss the shots. It's the compound mistake.
Yeah.
You can't compound your mistake. It's a mental thing. So you got one team that's keeping their cool even when they're down.
Because if he makes all of those threes, they would have been up 4, and instead they were down 1.
Yeah, but it's the down 1 that kills you.
Yeah,
you can get back and play defense. What you can't do is chase your own foul shot and foul somebody when you're in the penalty. And what, he fouled McKenzie? Was he like 96%?
Yeah.
It was crazy, And as a result of that, Vince took it. I think you had one more possession, and Vince took him out because Vince obviously figured out his head had gone as well. So he's then somebody whose threat is off the court, which is exactly where Leicester want him because he's a guy who can kind of shoot you out into a game straight away. So again, it's a mental error by Robertson. Mental errors by Green, mental error by Lewis. These are the differences. And then we get to a mental error by Dirk Williams.
Yeah. So Dirk scores, it's 80-82. And then we had the foul on the inbound that I thought was unsportsmanlike, but it
was a ridiculous foul.
Yeah.
It was a nonsense foul. He's on 4 fouls. He is +7 in a game that they lost by 7, and he played all but 4 minutes.
Yeah.
They lose the 4 minutes. He didn't play by 14. Fletcher is on 1 leg. Robertson is gone. Lewis is out of the game. Williams is going to have the ball in his hands, every offense down, and he decides to grab Whelan coming around the screen on inbounds when Whelan wasn't even coming round to go for the basketball. He was just it was Leicester's little pet play whereby the first guy curls and then the second guy curls. He pulled and he makes that error. That's the story in this. It's not whether it's 1 shot or 2 shots or whatever was going on. The story is that, again, incredibly incredible lack of discipline from a key player at a key time. And that rule change got me as well. I didn't know it, so so I'll give you that one. And and it was just crazy.
And it doesn't impact on them because Leicester don't actually score, but what it does do, as you say, is take a guy out of the game who would have had the ball in his hands at some point in that last minute, and then you get an offensive foul at the other end on Green for an illegal screen to give Leicester the ball back.
Well, it was too bad. I mean, I'm not going to let this SMB go without having a little bit more about block charge and illegal screens. there's been some bad block charge calls in this cycle. There was one at Paddy at Wang took one right in the chest on the baseline for Surrey. He got called for a block. Prince Onwas took a couple right in the chest for Caledonia. And he may not have been entirely set with his feet, but he doesn't have to be if he's taking an arm to the chest as the guy's coming forward. He was called for a block. The two illegal screens called on Taj Green in this game, which were, in my view, wrong. The first one was when he went to set the screen on Mackenzie. I think it might have just been in front of you, or certainly on the wing, and set the screen on Mackenzie. And he went to set it, but then he immediately slipped it. So he set it and he rolled. And what happened was Kimball stuck his leg out and impacted his roll. And the ref called it as an illegal screen but the screen had finished. You know, what the refs are calling is what happened afterwards. They're not calling the screens, right? And a player doesn't have to, there's no set time a player has to set a screen for. It's a skill to slip a screen. It's a skill to fake a screen and then go the other way. Now, if you fake the screen or you set it for a short period of time and then roll to the basket, and in the course of your rolling to the basket, you're obstructed by the defensive player, that's a defensive foul, and they're calling it as offensive fouls because the player set a screen immediately beforehand. And it's happened repeatedly, and it's beginning to frustrate me. And it's beginning to frustrate the offensive players as well. And then the foul called on the screen called on Green again. It was because Jackson fell down. You guys got it spot on the commentary. Ultimately he's there, he's set, he's within his cylinder, and Jackson falls down. If you are defending a screen at the moment, the best way to defend a screen is to hit the guy on the hip and fall over. So you try and get across that screen, but you don't actually get all the way around it. You just actually clip the guy on the hip, fall over, the other guy falls backwards at a funny angle. It's an illegal screen every single time, because the refs are reacting to what's falling or what's happening. And so basically there's been a mandate put forward in relation to clamping down on illegal screens, and which they never really had before. And again, I'm saying refs as if they're all the same person. They're not. It's not homogenized. And I don't know who's doing what and who's doing what to what, but they haven't been given enough experience or guidance in relation to the intricacies of setting a screen. And screening is now a massive part of the game, and not just screening, but rolling to the basket is a massive part of the game. So how long do you set you don't have to set the screen for 2 seconds and then roll. You can slip it, you can roll either way. I've seen people being called for illegal screens when the defender's gone under and they're rolling to the basket. The defender goes under a screen. And the attacking player's rolling to the basket and they call for illegal screen. That's not an illegal screen. He's not trying to set that screen. He's entitled to roll to that space. And I think it's got to it's close to epidemic proportions, because they're getting called at the end of games. They're getting called at the end of close games. And I'm going to mention the Donovan Johnson one for the 5th week in a row, just to Rob,
just to keep Rob happy.
Just to keep Rob happy. But no, it's not just it's that was a bad call. Given risk reward, benefit non-benefit, you have to be pretty sure. And I've got to that point now where I'm rewinding every single one of them. And at the moment, I'm saying I'm watching all the games. Obviously, we watch all the games. I would say probably 60 to 70% I would agree with. But I'm saying there's a higher proportion that the figure that I wouldn't agree with should be maybe 10%. It should be 30 or 35%. And that's where we're at the moment.
And so the thing is, and it is the whole thing is grey area. It's like me, like I said at the top here, it's okay for me and you to argue over what was a block and what was a charge, and it's okay for me on commentary to go, oh, that looked like a block to me, not a charge. But you can't get the process wrong, which is what I did earlier, and that was the. That's the thing. So I accept the point you're making. I think a lot of people have come to the conclusion that actually the line there is not quite where it should be, and I guess it's the question of, okay, so what do we do about that? Do you move the line, or does everybody have to adjust to the line? And we haven't got to that point yet.
No, well, the players are trying to adjust. You can see that. My bigger concern is the fouls that are being called while players are rolling when players have already set the screen, or the fouls that are being called because and a defending player is hitting the screener in the hip and falling over. That to me is and those calls really, I'm seeing very few cases where defending players are being called for making contact with an offensive player who's setting a legal screen, a legal one. If a defender makes contact with an offensive player setting a legal screen, so he's in his cylinder and he's not moving, they hit him on the hip, then if you're going to call the foul, it's a foul on the defender trying to get over the screen but not navigating it properly. And I'm not saying that at all. So I think there needs to be I know there's a lot of stuff going on. People say, refs don't get looked at. There's a lot of stuff goes on.
Yeah, there's a lot.
There's a lot of stuff goes on. There's a lot of review.
There's loads of it, and there's very experienced referees who are in charge of looking at this thing, and everything gets reviewed and blah blah blah. And at some point this weekend, I will get an email from somebody to tell me I was wrong.
Yeah,
that may be right. I already know that, but a referee, one of the referee chiefs, probably Richard, will email me and say, "You got this wrong. This is where you were wrong." And that's happened to me before, where I've got things wrong before, and I want them to do that. If I say it wrong, that's
and you can refer them to this and say, "Look, shut up."
Yeah. Please see my earlier tweet of saying I got it wrong. So
they need to have a montage of what are good calls and what are bad calls. They need to be showing them. It needs to happen quickly. Because it is becoming guesswork.
So let's go through the last couple of plays here. Jackson ends up with a mismatch. Fletcher on his back down low, spins well. Green comes over, but he fires high arcer over Green. 80-84, minute 7 to go. And then Fletcher comes back the other way, has a good looking three. It comes off the back iron. Leicester with the rebound, and that was the game.
It was the game. And ultimately Manchester had no offense in overtime. To be honest, they had no offense in overtime, as I say. Fletcher was hobbled, and the rest of them, with Williams fouled himself out. Lewis basically subbed himself out, and Robertson's done what he's done. Already gone. So they had nothing, and the team that played smartest, played most mature, showed the most intestinal resilience, and put away their egos, won. The team that put away the machismo won. The team that's used to winning, the team that knows what it takes to win. And that's why, people want to go back at Robertson's into, just look at Fletcher. He knows as soon as he sees it, what are you doing that for? What, because he knows how to win as well. He knows what it takes to win. He knows that's not it. Right? And that's why I say it was a great game. Because it revealed the character of the teams and the character, of some of the players, and the character of some of the players and their flaws was directly responsible for the winning and losing of that game. Not the refs, not the commentators. I'd love it to have been, but not the in-game announcer, not even the coaches. It's Zach Jackson getting up after maybe being trodden on, certainly being trodden on, and maybe being stamped on, who knows, and walking away. That wins. That's how you win. And, we've said it from the beginning with Green. I haven't seen it as much with Robertson, Why doesn't this happen in Europe? Because players in Europe, why do refs make them losing control quote marks in Europe? Because players in Europe don't do dumb crap like that. If you do something like Robertson did in Europe, you would be on a plane home tomorrow.
I can imagine the Serbian coach.
You would just be on a plane home tomorrow, and the rest of the team, you'll be ostracized. You would be gone, and and that's issues that we have to deal with certain players. But as hopefully as our standard increases, as our budgets increase, hopefully we'll be in a position whereby teams can be more certain as to the characters and the mentalities of some of the individuals that they've got. You cannot have the red mist go when you're up by 2 with a minute and a half to go against the most drilled team in the league. That's not being professional. That's the opposite. So don't talk to me about the refs or the commentators or the environment or the fans or anything like that. Talk to me about the players and the players who did right and the players who did wrong, because they're the ones who win games. Rant over.
Rant over. So show almost over as well. Fletcher, 20 points, 5 assists. You're late for your family do. My chaos seems to have calmed down a little bit over there, but I've got to go join it. Robertson, 19 and 8. Williams, 19 and 5. Manchester's shooting splits 39, 29, 55. Jackson 21 and 9, Loving 19 and 11, Mackenzie 15. Leicester shooting splits 33, 36, 33, 77, 24 of 31 from the free throw line. That was how they won the game, basically.
Yeah, well, more fouls. They foul less. 29 fouls to 18.
Yeah.
Discipline wins.
Yeah. So, quick look at the table before we go. Leicester top at Christmas. This is seeing if you were paying attention. How many times Leicester been top at Christmas?
It is the third.
It is the third. Well listened. Well listened. They were top.
Mistake.
Yeah, they they were top last year and in 2018, I think it was. But
never top of Christmas because they always backload all their games, so they only play games before Christmas.
Yeah, they'd always played fewer games in the years that they'd won the league. But they are top this year because they played more games because they're 11 and 4, and obviously London are 10 and 2 in second place. Bristol in third, 10 and 5. Caledonia and Plymouth both 8 and 6. Cheshire 7 and 9. Sheffield now 7 and 10. Yeah. The most wins of anybody in the playoff places, most losses, sorry, of anybody in the playoff places at the moment. Manchester 6 and 6, so 508th. Newcastle 3 and 10, and Surrey 1 and 13.
Ouch.
Indeed.
Well, I would give you a rundown on all of them, but I've got to be at the view at Gateshead to build the music. Well, I probably should get changed in case it looks like I'm going there to arrest somebody.
Or be arrested.
Yeah,
one or the other. It's how Christmas Eve should always end, in the drunk tank, isn't it? There we go. We'll start. We'll finish as we start.
There's a video online somewhere.
Are you going to see the boys of Northumbria Police, or is it Tyneside Police singing Galway Bay? Is that what you're?
No, it's a wonderful mashup online of somebody about 3 years old of 312 different Premier League football players' names being sung.
Okay, yeah.
Really fantastic. The ingenuity of some people is beyond. All we do is talk into computers, you know.
Indeed.
So yeah. No, I'm off to get some chocolate, I think.
Well, enjoy that, and hopefully everybody has a great Christmas. I'm assuming we're back on New Year's Day, are we? I think there's 2 games, is there? There's definitely Surrey are playing. I think there might be 2.
Yeah. We'll catch up. Keep it marked.
Indeed.
Indeed. Thanks, guys. Happy Christmas, everybody, for all 4 of you who are listening. Brilliant.
They're all coming on to hear mea culpa, aren't they? That's our biggest listening ever. Have a great Christmas, everybody, and we'll see you in the new year. Goodbye.